All right, ready to dive deep into Bitcoin.
Let's do it.
I feel like everyone's heard of it,
Right.
but how many people actually understand what it is
Yeah.
or how it works?
Exactly.
So that's our mission today, to demystify Bitcoin.
And I think the best place to start is by actually taking a step back
Okay.
and looking at the history of money.
Okay, so before Bitcoin.
Yeah, way before Bitcoin. I'm talking pre-credit cards, pre-dollar bills, even pre-gold coins.
So like back when people were trading seashells and stuff.
Exactly. Think about those giant stone discs they used on the island of Yap. Or, the shells and beads used by indigenous cultures. What do all those things have in common? They represent value, right? Within a specific community or society. They facilitate trade, they act as a store of value, and they reflect something really fundamental about human nature, which is our desire to exchange goods and services, to trade.
It's amazing how that abstract idea of value can take so many forms.
Isn't it? And those forms evolved as societies became more complex and interconnected. Gold and silver became dominant for a reason.
They're shiny.
Well, that's part of it, sure. But they also have those key characteristics of money: scarcity, portability, divisibility, durability.
Right. So there were practical reasons too. It wasn't just about looks. Gold held its value over time.
Precisely. The labor required to mine it, to refine it, that added to its intrinsic value. Then, boom, the 20th century hits, and we see a massive shift.
The move away from the gold standard.
You got it. The Nixon shock in 1971, big moment. The US dollar was no longer directly convertible to gold.
Yeah, I remember learning about that. But full disclosure, I didn't really get it at the time. What does it actually mean?
It ushered in the era of fiat currencies. That's money that isn't backed by a physical commodity like gold.
So what backs it then?
It's backed by, the full faith and credit of the government that issues it.
So basically a promise, like trust us, this piece of paper is worth something.
Pretty much. It all hinges on trust in the government and its ability to, manage the economy, keep inflation under control. But as you can imagine, not everyone was thrilled about this move away from a gold-backed system.
Right, because suddenly it's like, what's stopping governments from just printing more money whenever they feel like it?
Exactly. That's one of the big concerns with fiat currencies, the potential for inflation, manipulation of the money supply.
Okay, so this is where Bitcoin comes in, right? This whole idea of a digital currency that operates outside the control of any government or central bank.
Bingo. Bitcoin was conceived as a direct response to those perceived flaws in the traditional financial system. The goal: create a decentralized, secure, and transparent alternative. Think of it as digital cash for the internet age.
Digital cash, huh? Okay, I'm intrigued, but break it down for me. What makes Bitcoin so different?
So first and foremost, it's decentralized. No single entity controls it. It operates on a distributed network of computers all around the world, working together to verify transactions, keep everything running smoothly.
No central authority. That's a pretty radical concept. How does that even work in practice?
It's all thanks to the blockchain. It's essentially a public ledger of every Bitcoin transaction ever made.
Wait, so anyone can see every transaction?
That's the beauty of it, complete transparency. But while the transactions are public, the identities of those involved are protected by cryptographic keys. So it's a bit like a secure, anonymous digital cash system.
Okay, so transparency about the transactions, but privacy for the users. That's an interesting balance. What else makes Bitcoin stand out?
Well, unlike fiat currencies, which can be printed endlessly by governments, Bitcoin has a limited supply.
How limited are we talking?
Capped at 21 million coins. That's it. This scarcity is baked into the system's code, making it immune to the kind of inflation you get when you just create more money.
Ah, so it's tapping into that same idea of scarcity that we were talking about with gold. Limited supply equals inherent value. But, okay, here's a question. If Bitcoins aren't being printed by a government, how are they created in the first place?
That's where the whole concept of mining comes in. It involves powerful computers solving complex mathematical problems in order to verify transactions and add them to this blockchain.
So it's like a giant digital puzzle, and the miners are the ones solving it. But why go through all that trouble? What's the incentive?
There are two main incentives. First, miners are rewarded with newly created Bitcoins for their efforts. That's how new coins enter into circulation. And second, they earn transaction fees for processing payments on the network. It's a competitive process. Miners are constantly vying to solve the next block and claim those rewards.
So it's kind of like a digital gold rush, with miners using their computational power to dig for bitcoins. And this proof of work system, as you called it, that's what keeps the network secure and prevents fraud.
You got it. The sheer computational power required to mine bitcoins makes it incredibly difficult for any single person or group to gain control of the network or double spend coins. Every transaction is verified, recorded on the blockchain, a permanent and tamper-proof record.
Wow, it's definitely complex, but it's also ingenious. I'm starting to see why people are so fascinated by this whole thing.
And we've really just scratched the surface. There's so much more to dive into, from the real-world applications of Bitcoin to, the broader implications of blockchain technology itself. It's a whole new world out there.
Well, this is definitely a good start.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm finally starting to wrap my head around the basics of Bitcoin.
Great.
But I'm definitely eager to hear more.
Me too. So ready to dive back into the world of Bitcoin?
Absolutely. Last time we were talking about Bitcoin's decentralized nature and its limited supply.
Right.
But I'm really curious to hear more about how it's actually being used in the real world.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like, is it really living up to its promise as this revolutionary form of money?
I think one of the most compelling aspects of Bitcoin is how it can empower individuals, especially those who are excluded from traditional financial systems.
You're talking about people in countries with unstable currencies or limited access to banking services.
Exactly. Imagine living in a country where hyperinflation is just eroding your savings every single day.
Right.
Or where you just don't have access to a bank account. Bitcoin can offer a way to store and transfer value without relying on those systems.
It's almost like a digital safe.
Yeah.
That you can access from anywhere in the world.
Exactly. As long as you have an internet connection.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Are there specific examples of how this is playing out in the real world?
Absolutely. We've seen Bitcoin emerge as a lifeline in places like Venezuela, for example. Hyperinflation has absolutely ravaged their local currency.
Right.
People are using Bitcoin to protect their savings, to send remittances to family members abroad, even just to conduct everyday transactions.
Wow, so it's not just a theoretical concept.
No.
It's actually making a tangible difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And it's not just about these crisis situations.
Yeah.
Bitcoin has the potential to revolutionize cross-border payments.
Making them faster and cheaper.
Exactly. Bitcoin transactions can be completed in minutes with fees that are often significantly lower than traditional methods. This is a game changer for businesses, for freelancers, for anyone who needs to send or receive money across borders.
It sounds incredibly promising, but I have to ask.
Yeah.
Bitcoin also has its fair share of critics out there.
For sure.
Some people see it as, a volatile speculative asset.
Right.
More like gambling than a real form of money.
Yeah.
How do you respond to those concerns?
Well, it's true. Bitcoin's price has been volatile in the past.
Yeah.
And sure, there's an element of speculation there.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that Bitcoin is still a relatively new technology. As it matures and gains wider adoption, I think we can expect that volatility to decrease. It's think about the early days of the internet. There were plenty of ups and downs, but the underlying technology had the potential to transform the world, and ultimately it did.
So you're saying we need to look beyond these short-term price fluctuations.
Yeah.
And focus on the long-term potential of the technology itself.
Exactly. Because the real value of Bitcoin isn't just about its price. It's about those underlying principles that it represents.
Like decentralization.
Decentralization, transparency, security. These are qualities that people are increasingly valuing in a world where trust in institutions is, kind of declining.
Yeah, I see your point.
It's not just about the money itself, it's about the system it represents, one that's more open, more transparent, more accessible to everyone.
Okay, so let's say I'm convinced.
Okay.
I want to start using Bitcoin.
Great.
What are some of the practical challenges I might encounter?
Well, one of the biggest challenges facing Bitcoin right now is scalability. The current network can only process a limited number of transactions per second, which can lead to delays, higher fees, especially during times of high demand.
It's like a highway that gets congested during rush hour.
Exactly.
So what's being done to address that?
There are a number of promising solutions in development. One of the most exciting is something called the Lightning Network. It's basically a second layer technology that sits on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, enabling much faster and cheaper transactions.
So it's like adding express lanes to that highway.
That's a great analogy. The Lightning Network is like a turbocharger for Bitcoin, making it more practical for everyday use.
I like it.
And then you have other innovations like sidechains, which allow transactions to be processed off the main Bitcoin blockchain.
Taking even more pressure off.
Exactly.
So it sounds like there's a lot of energy going into making Bitcoin more user-friendly and scalable.
Yeah, for sure.
But even if we overcome these technical hurdles, there's still the question of regulation.
Right.
Governments are still trying to figure out how to approach Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Some see it as a threat, others are more open to the possibilities.
Exactly. It's a complex and evolving landscape, for sure.
So it sounds like the future of Bitcoin is still very much being written.
It is.
What do you think are some of the key factors that will determine its success?
Well, I think widespread adoption is crucial.
Makes sense.
For Bitcoin to truly become a global currency, more people need to use it.
Yeah.
Businesses need to accept it. And that means overcoming that chicken and egg problem we talked about before.
Right, getting businesses on board so people can use it, but people need to be using it for businesses to want to be on board.
Exactly.
It's a tricky situation.
It is. And I think continued innovation is going to be essential as well. Solving those scalability issues, developing new applications, making it easier for people to understand and use.
It sounds like there's a lot to look forward to in the world of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, it's a dynamic space. Developers and entrepreneurs are constantly pushing boundaries. It's exciting to see what they come up with next.
Welcome back. We've been on quite a journey exploring Bitcoin. From its ancient roots to its potential to revolutionize finance, we've covered a lot of ground.
It's been fascinating.
It has. But for this last part, I thought we could shift gears a bit.
Oh.
Let's move away from the technical stuff and dive into something a bit more, shall we say, philosophical.
I like the sound of that.
Because Bitcoin isn't just a technology, right?
Right.
It's an idea.
It's a powerful idea.
It really makes you question our assumptions about money, power, trust. It's like suddenly you realize the system you've always taken for granted could be different.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about Bitcoin. It embodies this idea of decentralization.
Which really boils down to distributing power more broadly.
Right. Instead of relying on these central authorities, governments, banks, Bitcoin proposes a system where trust is established through a distributed network, through cryptography, through transparency.
So instead of blind faith in institutions, we're putting our faith in math, in code.
In a way, yes. It's a pretty radical shift.
It is. And it makes you think, what are the implications for, well, everything? Not just finance, but other parts of our lives.
Absolutely. Imagine voting systems secured by blockchain technology, or having more control over your own data thanks to decentralized identity systems.
So it's not just about money. It's about shifting the balance of power, giving individuals more autonomy.
Exactly. It's a fundamental challenge to the status quo. That's what I find so fascinating about Bitcoin. It sparks this bigger conversation about how we organize ourselves as a society, especially in the digital age.
It's like a social experiment playing out in real time. We get a front row seat to see how this idea of decentralization actually works, what the challenges are, what opportunities it creates.
And it's still early days. Bitcoin is still evolving.
Right, like the Wild West out there.
Exactly. A lot of experimentation, a lot of different perspectives. We don't know what the future holds.
Which is both exciting and a little nerve-wracking, right?
For sure. Like standing at the edge of a new frontier.
Not sure what we'll find, but we can't wait to explore.
That's the spirit. There will be risks and rewards, wins and losses. But one thing's for certain. Bitcoin and this whole blockchain revolution has already changed the way we think about money, power, the future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Bitcoin, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I hope they come away with a sense of curiosity, a willingness to engage with these ideas even if they're complex. Because Bitcoin is more than just a currency.
It's a catalyst for change.
Exactly. A reminder that the future isn't set in stone. We all have a role to play in shaping the world we want to live in.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And the more we understand these emerging technologies, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this exciting and sometimes uncertain future. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep,